Republican senators. He has many governors, including the influential governor of New Hampshire behind him. And I think this has all taken him quite a bit by surprise. My own guess is that at the end of the day, he has too much support, too much money to be beaten. But it says something about the state of the Republican Party that the best that they can come up with is a septuagenarian Kansas senator.
Jeff, I think the other problem for Bob Dole is that he's been around Washington for 35 years. He's the ultimate career politician at a time when, you know, most Americans really have this enormous distaste for Washington politics. And when Washington, in a way, has replaced Moscow as the center of all evil in the universe. And the Washington bashing going on in this country is just phenomenal. You hear it every day on the talk radio shows, Rush Limbaugh and so on. That could be a big liability for Bob Dole.
But I have to say, I think Americans are a little bit hypocritical on this subject. I mean, I think that you do have a genuine distaste for inside the Beltway Washington. But on the other hand, I think that in Forbes, people see someone that at first blush they're attracted by, but on second look, and Iowans, Forbes has been around long enough that Iowans have had an opportunity, I think, to start taking a second look. People start to hesitate, and we saw this in the Ross Perot campaign 4 years ago. Initially, people kind of flocked to him, then they had some doubts. I think you start to see the same thing happening, and as much as Americans claim to dislike Washington insiders, they do look for some experience. And I heard some farmers who told me they kind of liked Steve Forbes, but they were a little worried about his flat tax, and they also said he's a little green. One of them said to me, I might vote for him if he had 4 years of experience in Washington, but he doesn't have enough dirt under his fingernails as a politician.
Nobody's even mentioned Pat Buchanan yet. Kathy, given the strength of the right in Iowa, is he being written off already?
Well, no, I don't think so. I don't think anyone seriously thinks Buchanan can get the nomination. I think he can have an impact, though, on the party platform, on the tone of the campaign, and on what kind of concessions the ultimate nominee has to make to him. I mean, Pat Buchanan has touched a chord in this country. There are people who have been put out of work by the economic dislocations. He is really speaking for them. No one else in the Republican Party is. So I think you're going to see Buchanan have a core of support. It will not be enough to give him the nomination, but he is going to be a voice in this Republican Party, and an important one.
Well, the problem that they have is that in order to win the nomination, you have to pander to and cater to, in the Republicans' case, a number of groups on the extreme right of the American political spectrum, evangelical Christians, strong anti-abortion people, etc. So you've got to pander to them, and Dole has been doing that through the last 6 or 8 months. But then, of course, as soon as you win, you've got to win the broad mainstream of American public in order to become president. And we saw the last time the Republicans did themselves a great deal of damage by pandering too much to these groups. Buchanan put on a shameful display at their convention, which shocked a lot of mainstream Americans. So if Dole wins this thing, having done battle with the nasty Phil Gramm from Texas and from Buchanan with his protectionism and his anti-abortion and flat tax Steve Forbes, he's going to have to swing himself more towards the mainstream in order to win, or else the president's going to win in a romp.
Which he's in a pretty good position to do, Jeff, because here's a man who's inherently a pretty moderate kind of guy. Sure, he'll run to the right before the nomination, but he'll run back hard towards the center after it. And here's a man who's, in a curious way, is trying to vie with Clinton as the bulwark against Newt Gingrich and those wild extremists in the House of Representatives. Took issue with Gingrich, of course, over the partial government shutdown here a few months ago. So Dole, in a way, lacking charisma as he does, is in a good position to go for that critical center of American politics.
Well, what about Bill Clinton? Kathy, Carly, what's he got at stake here? He's not being challenged, is he?
He's been able to stay above the fray and say things like, oh, elections shouldn't be used to divide people, they should be used to unite the country, and allude to the Republicans just as those folks who are running TV ads against each other. So he's had a wonderful weekend here, and I think is enjoying the Republican contest thoroughly.
It's amazing, because a year and a half ago, after the Republicans swept the midterm elections with their contract for America, I'm sure not Kathy, but 90% of the so-called experts in the American press were writing him off. He was dead, he was gone, and it was just a matter of which Republican was going to defeat him.
Very quickly, Jeffrey, what should Canadians watch for out of this?
Well, I think the only thing we have to watch for is whether the flat tax idea goes anywhere. In some Canadian circles, the Reform Party, the Conservative Party, people are toying with this idea. if it really catches on and ignites the Forbes campaign to the nomination, there's no question that it'll spill more into Canadian politics, but at the moment, it's still at the margin of our political discourse.
David, last thought?
Well, foreign policy issues, let alone Canada, aren't really playing very high in this campaign so far, Paul, but bear in mind that Patrick Buchanan 2 years ago distinguished himself by saying that if Quebec separates, that he'd love to see the rest of Canada join the United States.
All right, on that, thanks to all three of you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And that's it for this edition of Sunday Report. Your first news tomorrow is the CBC Morning News. Tomorrow night, join Peter Mansbridge and Hannah Gartner for The National. Now, stay tuned for Venture with Robert Scully.